What if you were locked in perfect absolute darkness for 72 hours, and by the end, you couldn't trust your own mind? No phone, no light, no shadows, just you and whatever your brain decides to invent. You might imagine it would be a peaceful retreat, a chance to finally catch up on sleep, meditate, or just escape the relentless glare of your smartphone. You think you'd emerge after 72 hours feeling refreshed, perhaps even enlightened. But sensory deprivation doesn't quiet the mind, it starves it. And when the brain is starving, it starts to feed on itself. Stay with me, because what happens between hour 1 and day 3 is a psychological freefall most people never see coming. And before we go deeper, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel explores the strange, terrifying, and fascinating things happening inside your own body, the things no one warns you about. So hour 1 to 12 is what we'd call the beautiful lie. It's hour 1. You've entered the chamber. The door clicks shut and the last sliver of light vanishes. For the first few hours, it feels incredible. In the total darkness, your body's actually quite happy. You feel a sense of profound relaxation. Your shoulders loosen. Your breathing slows. The darkness wraps around you like a thick, comfortable blanket. Without the constant screens and light blasting your eyes, your pineal gland starts to get very, very excited, and your brain releases melatonin like it's making up for lost time. You drift into deep, heavy sleep. Initially, your brain enjoys the silence. Imagine your mind is a busy office building after everyone has gone home for the weekend. The janitors, the glymphatic system, come out to sweep up the metabolic trash. Your nervous system powers down. Your heart rate drops. For the first time in what could be years, your brain is not overstimulated. You feel safe. You feel very good. You feel calm and restored. But this is a misleading lie. If a dark room has ever felt comforting to you, comment peace below, because that comfort is exactly what tricks people into thinking the next phase won't hit them. And it does. It always does. Hour 13 to 24, when silence gets loud, or as we'd be calling it, the shift. You wake up, and the darkness suddenly feels heavier. This is no longer a warm, comfy blanket anymore. It's a weight. To understand what happens next, I read through dozens of sensory deprivation studies and accounts from prisoners in solitary confinement, so you don't have to. Now, let's understand this. Your brain is an information machine. It survives by mapping reality through sight, sound, and touch. When your vision disappears, the brain does not relax. Rather, it compensates. Every other sense in your body begins to sharpen. At this point, things you thought impossible begins to happen, like hearing your own heartbeat, the blood rushing through the vessels in your ears, a persistent whoosh that never stops. Your skin becomes hypersensitive. The friction of your clothes against your body feels like sandpaper. Because the brain isn't receiving external data, it starts to run hot. It begins to amplify the internal noise to fill the vacuum. Your neurons are firing, looking for a signal that isn't there, like a radio tuned to static and cranked to maximum volume. The brain is effectively starving, and in its hunger, it begins to digest itself. You think you might be able to handle that, but most people underestimate this stage. Hour 24 to 48, the fraying edge. Day 2 is where your brain crosses a line it can't easily uncross. Your brain starts making its own reality. Your eyes are sending no data to the visual cortex, so the visual cortex begins generating its own. First come flashes of light, swirls, colors, neon grids, floating sparks. These are called phosphenes, your brain hallucinating out of boredom. But they don't stop there. The phosphenes evolve. Those faint geometric patterns, they start assembling into objects, faces, animals, rooms you've never been in. Your visual cortex, now running almost entirely on self-generated signals, isn't just producing static anymore. It's producing cinema. Full, vivid, three-dimensional hallucinations projected onto the darkness like a movie screen you can't turn off. It's not schizophrenia. This is not a pre-existing condition revealing itself. This happens to neurologically healthy people every single time. Your brain simply cannot tolerate a blank visual field. It would rather lie to you than process nothing. The Charles Bonnet effect takes over. At this turning point, the mind stops being a spectator and starts being a director. Your cortisol levels are climbing now. Your adrenal glands are dumping stress hormones into your bloodstream because your amygdala, your brain's threat detector, keeps getting tripped by hallucinations it can't verify. Your body is essentially running hot, flooding itself with fight-or-flight chemistry in response to threats manufactured by its own wiring. Sleep becomes chaotic. Without light cues, your melatonin release drifts into random windows. You'll fall asleep at what feels like noon. You'll wake up gasping at what might be 3 in the morning or might be Tuesday. You genuinely wouldn't know. And here's the part that unsettled me most in the research. Your emotional regulation starts crumbling. Subjects in darkness studies reported sudden, overwhelming waves of panic, grief, or euphoria with no trigger. One moment you're fine, the next you're weeping. Your prefrontal cortex, your rational, planning brain, is losing its grip because it has nothing external to anchor to. No light, no time, no reference point. People in prolonged darkness often begin talking out loud just to prove the world still contains sound. At this point, you're no longer sitting in darkness, you are floating inside your own nervous system. Stay with me, because day 3 is where the mind stops pretending. But before we find out what hour 72 looks like, hit subscribe, because if your brain does this in mere darkness, wait until you see what else it does when you push. Hour 48 to 72. The crash and the horror. By day 3, the hallucinations aren't just visual anymore. They're auditory, tactile, fully formed. From flashes of light to a person in the corner of the room, footsteps where no one walks, a hand touching your shoulder. Your brain has gone from generating images to generating entire sensory environments that do not exist. This is the breaking point. The psychological breakdown is now physical. Your cortisol levels, the stress hormone, are through the roof because you're in a state of constant low-level panic. Your digestion slows to a crawl. Your muscles are tense, locked in a permanent fight-or-flight response. Your nervous system is trapped in silent panic, but there is nothing to fight and nowhere to fly. Some subjects in deprivation studies reported losing the boundary between themselves in the room, a terrifying dissolution of proprioception where they couldn't tell where their body ended and the darkness began. Others described the sensation of a presence, a distinct, palpable feeling that someone else was in the room, standing just behind them, breathing. Your prefrontal cortex is now significantly impaired. Decision-making slows. Short-term memory fragments. Some researchers have compared the cognitive profile at 72 hours of total darkness to early-stage delirium. Your brain, designed to model reality using external data, is now modeling reality using only itself, and the models are getting increasingly unhinged. Your circadian rhythm is essentially gone. Cortisol is chronically elevated. Your immune function is measurably suppressed. Your body, in just 3 days, has begun behaving as though it's under siege, because from its perspective, it is. Every system is running at full throttle to fight an enemy that doesn't exist. This is the most scary part of it. Dissociation. The brain's internal modeling system has totally collapsed. Without a visual world to anchor you, you simply cease to exist as a coherent person. Your mind is a theater where the play has gone horribly wrong and the actors are screaming at the audience. All of a sudden, everything ceases to be just darkness and becomes an experience. Aftermath: the return to light. When the door finally opens at the end of the third day, the recovery is almost as traumatic as the isolation. The first flash of light isn't a relief, it's an explosion. Your pupils, which have been dilated to their maximum for days, are hit with a photon bomb. It feels like someone is driving a needle into your brain. The hallucinations, however, stops within hours. And in a day or two, your circadian rhythm re-anchors. By the end of a week, your cortisol normalizes. But the memory doesn't fade so easily. Subjects consistently describe those 3 days as among the most psychologically intense experiences of their lives, not because anything happened to them, but because they met the version of their brain that operates without a leash. The human mind is not a passive camera. It's a hallucination engine that's normally constrained by reality. Light, sound, touch, these don't just give you information, they keep your brain honest. The brain is incredibly resilient, but it was designed to navigate a world of color, movement, and light. Without it, we aren't just bored, we are broken. So, could you last 3 days in total darkness? And more importantly, with your brain inventing faces in the void, would you trust yourself to know they weren't real? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know.